When you think about your kind of phases as a company, you think about how you can apply your energy in the best way possible. What's happening though is that businesses don't really stay still, do they? Even if you're doing everything right, customers change, markets change, your products change, and your ambitions change, right? You get more courage and confidence as you keep meeting milestones. And so the adaptable leadership, in my view, is adjusting where you place your focus, your time, and your energy to have the maximum impact on the business to get to the goal that you want. And I say the goal you want because you may not want to be a $100 million business, right? You may just want to be at a certain level with a certain level of quality and profitability, and that is fine. But you're able to adapt your behavior and sort of how you spend your time in order to get there. So that's one of the, I guess, at the very sort of nucleus level of adaptive leadership.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to talk about adaptable leadership. When you think about being adaptable, you probably say that you're pretty adaptable. But when I actually am coaching clients, I realize that they're not as adaptable as they think they are. Their ability to accept change and accept a new thought pattern or look at things differently is not as easy as it makes sense, or they say that is. So when I say all that, I love for you to think about today's episode about being adaptable, being an adaptable leader specifically is something that can be developed. It's something that's important as you continue to grow your company. Today's special guest is the founder of Pricing.io with Marcos Rivera. Marcos and I talk about adaptable leadership, where it came from, how he actually lives it inside of growing and scaling his company. And Marcos and I had a really great conversation. I think you want to tune in today. One of the things I like about it is some of the examples and the tactics that he shared about what adaptable leadership actually looks like inside of his company. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm a CEO coach. We do executive coaching. We do leadership development, manager coaching. It sounds like we do a lot of things, but what we really do is help people go from just being MVPs in the business to creating more MVPs. It was a line that one of my clients got me, and I knew that he understood it, and it resonated with me. It's resonated with a lot of our clients, is that's the way companies continue to scale. If you are the most important person in your business, your business isn't that important. Let that sink in for a second. And so we help you figure out how to get out of your own way, how to create a business that runs without you, how to create the kind of systems and leadership that really drive growth without you having to watch over it. And that is really what we do. And so if you're curious about that, send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. My offer to you is to help you figure out what's standing in your way. What are the shifts necessary mindset-wise or otherwise to help you be the leader that your people want to follow and to create that kind of MVP experience where MVPs become those that create more MVPs or multipliers, if you will. If you want to have that conversation with me, just send me an email and I'd love to talk to you about your business. Mention that you saw or heard this on a podcast, and it's absolutely free. Otherwise, it's going to cost you some money to be able to get that time with me. But I want to serve my audience. And so if you're listening to this right now, take action. Gene@genehammett.com. Now, here's the interview with Marcos. Marcos, how are you?
I'm doing terrific.
We're going to have a great podcast episode here. Before we dive in, tell us about your company, Pricing.io.
Thanks, Gene. I appreciate it, man. So Pricing.io, we help companies figure out how to charge for their stuff. We help them with the pricing, the packaging, positioning, all those key things. In many cases, they're kind of guessing on what to price. And then if you've been there, or we've all been there. So we help them move away from that guesswork and help them figure it out on purpose. So that's, in a short nutshell, what we do.
So we had talked before we cut the recorder on about using AI. Is AI, helping you serve your clients in different ways?
You know what? It is. And I think that if you're going to ignore this gigantic wave, if I will call it even a tsunami coming at us, then I think you're going to be in for a world of hurt. So for companies like ours, we've been around for about 5 years now, and we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of frameworks, a lot of data, a lot of examples, things like that. And the AI, just the first experiments that we've been doing is just, can you help us kind of go through the data and research and give us some very key recommendations? Almost think of it as like a brainstorming partner on some ideas, instead of us reading documents this by ourselves and taking forever. The AI is helping us do that. They're also doing other things like on the technical side of things, we use a lot of Python code to look at data, and the AI is helping us just with better code. It's making our code better and faster. And so it's helping us in a lot of different ways.
Well, I know it's helping us too. So I love to see people that are embracing it. I do believe, and I'll just be blunt, companies that are saying, oh, I hope it doesn't touch our industry, or I hope it doesn't, impact us. I think you're gonna have a rude awakening. I think that it's going to touch nearly everything, and it will impact some more than others. And those that can embrace it, use it for even operational excellence in the beginning, which is just better serving our clients, analyzing data, whatever it may be, will have an advantage over those that are resisting it at this point.
Exactly. You take folks around our age, right, who've seen the sort of internet kind of take over the world. Even smartphones have also taken over. This is that next wave, but it will be faster and furious than the previous because it's compounding on everything we've built and developed over the years, and so it's just going to cycle faster. And here's the crazy part: is that AI is going to keep feeding into AI, right? So the output of one AI into another, and so the cycles, the coding of itself, like I mentioned a minute ago, will actually increase the development even more so. So it's building up quickly, and I would say in 6 months from now, we're going to hear and see new things that we don't know about now. And of course, we know 6 months ago things were different. So yeah, it's going to keep on cycling.
I agree with you. Well, that's the technology portion of today's conversation.
Yeah.
Now we're going to jump into leadership, and we curate guests like you want to be on the show. We do kind of look at the Inc. 5000 as kind of a place this, because I'm very fascinated with growth. My clients are growing at breakneck speed sometimes, and breakneck speeds doesn't mean like 1,000% a year, but it may mean doubling every year is difficult. And if you did that for 5 years straight, it's very hard. So adaptable leadership is something that has helped you in your business. What is your definition of adaptable leadership?
Yeah, that's a great term, adaptable leadership. So when you think about your phases as a company, you think about how you can apply your energy in the best way possible. What's happening though is that businesses don't really stay still, do they? Even if you're doing everything right, customers change, markets change, your products change, and your ambitions change, right? You get more courage and confidence as you keep meeting milestones. And so the adaptable leadership, in my view, is adjusting where you place your focus, your time, and your energy to have the maximum impact on the business to get to the goal that you want. And when I say the goal you want, because you may not want to be $100 million business, right? You may just want to be at a certain level with a certain level of quality and profitability, and that is fine. But you're able to adapt your behavior and sort of how you spend your time in order to get there. So that's one of the, I guess, at the very sort of nucleus level of adaptive leadership.
I have a model that we use inside of our executive coaching, and it's got 7 dials. One of the dials that I added a few years ago was adaptability. Just score yourself from 1 to 10 on adaptability. And organizations, most of them, though, when I ask them that question, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm absolutely adaptable. But then when I start the conversation with them and I'm like asking about certain things, and they're like, no, that's just the way I am. And that's just the way it is. And that's just the way all these signals come up that they aren't really that adaptable. Where did you learn in your history of why adaptability is such an important force for your company?
Well, I look at it as the acceptance and comfort with change, okay? And then being thoughtful about how you change alongside it. So, from my perspective, just personally speaking, growing up, right, I lost my mom when I was 11 years old, had to adapt, moved from New York City all the way to the West Coast in California, had to adapt, moved from a, poor inner city, apartment to campus in college and a really nice campus. So adapting is something that I think everyone has to go through at some point in their lives, but it's sort of how they deal with it, I think, is what's going to help build the muscle. And I think there are a lot of people out there without a muscle built in adapting. They'll resist, they'll do what they can to sort of maybe even regress, and that sort of helps kind of keep them stagnant and makes it hard for them to move and makes it hard for them to change. For my company, just to give you the specifics, going from a solopreneur entrepreneur and an expert who is a very skilled at something very specific, and then sort of growing that to a team of folks. And when I say a team, I'm talking 4 to 6 people, working together, and then moving that to a business, moving in now into a phase of a company. When the number of people, the scale in which you start delivering your products and services change, you have to adapt. And that's where I think it all starts. That's where the pressure comes from.
Now, we've been talking about being an adaptable leader. I've got a 7-dial system. If you want the full 7 dials, just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com, and I'll send them to you. Probably even have a little training that goes with it so that you can unpack it. But let me just give you how I look at this. I want you to think about this for yourself. If you're an adaptable leader, scale yourself from 1 to 10. 10 would be transcendent, meaning it is a powerhouse strategic advantage in your business. 9 would be excellent. 7 would be, it's okay, but room for improvement. 5 is average. And 1 is, it's broken. What is your number? If you want to send me an email on that, send it to me. I've already given it to you my email a few times today, gene@genehammett.com. But if you really are honest with yourself, are you coming in at a 3, 5, 7, maybe a 9? How adaptable are you? Just think about that, rate it for yourself, and continue on with this conversation with Marcos. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this. I want to focus on the team first. So you've got about 20 or so people. You've done incredible work. Being on the Inc. 5000 is no small feat. And you are developing them to have that same level of adaptability. Can you give us a story or some kind of example of adaptability within the team?
100%. So I have to see which one is the best one, most suitable for this. When I was running the entire consulting program, and I would sit down and go through every single session, go through every single analysis, things like that, just to make sure that all the dots were connected. One thing that really helped from adaptability, from a leadership perspective, I said, is that really the maximizing use of my time? Is this really where I can help the team? It's wonderful when we only have a handful of projects, but as we move on to dozens of projects and even more so, the scalability factor comes down. So one thing that was a very big clue was, if you win more, but you feel like you're losing because you have no time, then there's some opportunity to adapt. So when I saw that happening, I switched gears to reviewing every single analysis and session, to then creating what I call playbooks, just mini playbooks. And what I was doing, and this is the piece that took a lot of discipline, and I kept getting it wrong, and it took time for me to get this right, but I would actually go through my thought process, record it, and write it down. Okay. And then I would actually do it alongside someone and say, here's what's going on. Do you understand what we're doing? And so instead of doing it all myself, I was finding mechanisms to transition that knowledge to the rest of my team, so that way they can do it and we can scale a lot more. That was something I thought was not that important when we were just me and another 1 or 2 people. But as we started growing to 5, 6, or 7 and expanding, I changed my view and I had to adapt.
When you have an employee who seems to be not adapting to whatever the change is going on, it could be AI, it could be even adding new people to the team, because that's a form of adaptation. The culture starts to shift a little bit when you start adding different personalities, whatnot. How do you handle those situations as a leader?
Yeah, it's something that also built in. Adaptive requires a lot of patience as well. It sounds very proactive, right? Hey, you got to adapt, you got to keep changing and moving. But there's actually a patience factor that you have to understand, because not everyone adapts at the same pace. And it also, I'll give you one quick framework that I built and thought through, is I found that the person that was a lot more experienced, they've seen a lot more things, have been through a lot more, types of roles, I could actually help them adapt a little bit faster with some high level guidance, a few repetitions, and they kind of got it. And then you just give them a little bit of a touch and go type of feel. Hey, everything okay? You have questions? But then those that were a little earlier in their career, maybe more junior, haven't seen a lot of scenarios, worked through with a lot of people, I noticed I had to break things down in smaller steps, like smaller bite-sized steps. And that was a big change because I wrote the playbook. I just got used to writing these things. Okay, Gene. And now how come it's not working for everybody? Well, you read it and did fine, but you didn't. I had to step back and be patient and understand different people learn differently and at different paces. And so I had to adopt my playbook approaches in order to help them. And when I did that, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but you just have to take the step forward and see what happens anyway. And thankfully, it did work.
Since we're talking about it being adaptable, I want to go even further back into your entrepreneurial careers. And it could be at this company. So we're not going to go back into your childhood or anything like that. But we all have inflection points. I shared with you mine before we cut on the recorder. I ran a business. I was very successful until one day I lost everything. And it caused me to change, caused me to really connect with a different side of me. And I'm very thankful for these inflection points. It doesn't have to be that things fell apart and got worse, but can you share with us an inflection point demonstrating your own adaptability as a leader?
100%. This is actually really great timing. I had dinner with some friends the other night, and we were laughing because my wife was talking about how I used to be a personal trainer. And this is many, many years ago. I am in nowhere near the same shape as I was back then, okay? But I was a personal trainer. And think about that role, like what you're doing as a personal trainer, right? You have to book your own clientele base. You have to understand like psychology of people. You have to understand what's motivating this person to, is it to lose weight and fit into the wedding dress? Is it to get off medication? Is it to build, muscle? Like what is it? And once you start understanding that, and now you're learning how to ask questions and listen and play back, then you craft a program that's going to fit for them. You help them see it through, because just because they start doesn't mean they want to finish. You help them see it through all the way. And then when you have the results and you show it, you see how motivating real results are and how people start to change their mindset. Okay. And by the way, I was a personal trainer for like 5 years. Okay. And I grew my book of business. I was a #1 ranked trainer, things like that. But that's where a lot of the muscles and skills that I use for running my business today and as an entrepreneur came from. And I never thought about that until my wife, she brought it up as a joke just to make fun at the table because I was eating something that wasn't so healthy. And it turned out as a reflection point, like, oh, actually, you know what? That's what did it. That's what really helped me get comfortable with entrepreneurs.
I also looked at, you talk about different skills that it takes to lead with different stages of a company. Being a solo entrepreneur is some way a lot of freedom because there's no one to count on but yourself. There's no disappointment. And why won't you just do your job to all these people out there? I also know that when you have 4 people to 6, it's a very different experience. And then when you get to be 20, where you are now, it's also a different experience. And a lot of this has to do with communication, but can we get really specific on what skills you had to develop as leading these different size companies, same company, but it's just at, the growth phases of this. What skills did you have to develop in this journey?
I'm very happy you said that. When I was starting off in this current company with Pricing.io, I was scared, nervous, but also relieved that I didn't have, bosses to report to and, reports to send up to management and political BS that you see in most companies and things like that. So I was really happy about the freedom. You're right. And the freedom is a bit intoxicating. You love it. But then if you're successful and you want to grow and expand, that's, a path that you can take. You bring on people, and now you're starting to shift the focus away from yourself to others. And this is where things start to change. And so from 4 to 6, the first thing that started changing was a little bit more about, hey, how do I make sure that this person is successful? But guess what? It was only successful in what I wanted them to take off my plate. This is a very big difference in the very early stages of a 4 to 6 member team versus the 28 to 25, which is where we are now, is I wanted to know how much can I delegate to you and how much can you do on my behalf so I could free up time to do more work with clients is what I was doing. So all the stuff I didn't like, Gene, like the billing and invoicing and calendaring and analysis in Excel spreadsheets and all that stuff, I would just delegate that stuff out. So it wasn't really a business or company. It was a team where it was really just me and my helpers in the very beginning, right? Just to confess to you a little bit. But what I started realizing is that they only did what they were assigned to do, and that was it. And I was constantly checking and making sure that things were right. In addition, I was still doing all the client work. So I filled that time with more client work. And that's where I think the limits were really placed. So what the breakthrough came out for me to when I started going, and that why I'm at this 2025 and still growing and profitable and all that, were three things that happened. Okay. The first thing is them, not you. Okay. So from there, I said, let me invest more time in where their skills are at and what they can take and make decisions on their own. Initially, when you're 4 to 6 people, they're not really making too many decisions on their own. They're just kind of following the recipe, following orders. Now I need to make sure that I'm asking a lot more questions than I am telling. Okay. In the beginning, you're telling a lot, but when you start expanding to that 25 mark, you're asking feedback, making sure that they understand. Where can I help? Hey, how would you do this? Is there a way that you think you can do it better than me? The second thing I picked up was a lot of systems mattered a lot more. When you're small, you're scrappy, you can do whatever you got to do. You stay really fluid. But the second thing around systems is, hey, let's actually document. Let's get a process in place. And I bought little project management systems and little things, and I bought Slack for communication. Like you start putting these things in place, and now you have a system. You do this, you do that, and the system flows. You create a little automation, maybe integration, and now you have systems. And now you operate within the system. And the big lesson for me as a leader was don't blame the person, blame the system. And where can we fix the system to get more efficiency out? That was the second big lesson. Third big lesson was energy. Remember, I told you as soon as I freed up time by delegating, I just did more client work. I didn't free up any headspace whatsoever. And so, what I did was a really tactical thing you can do is a calendar audit. And all I did was I just went in my Google. I'd use Google Calendar, by the way, and I just blocked all the time and I color coded it and I tagged it. Okay. And even when I wasn't doing something, I would block it. Break time, lunch, whatever it is, I would just block it all. And I did this for about 6 to 8 weeks. And then there's a Google feature that lets you sum all those times and says, hey, you spent this much in breaks, you spent this much with clients, you spent this much on sales calls, you spent this much, and you can even see what's going on. And there, with that little piece of information, I was able to start adjusting some of my behavior. Say, hey, I think you guys should be able to handle this meeting without me. Let's make sure you're ready, and then started creating the space. Space is not going to come out of nowhere. You actually have to create it as an entrepreneur. So that was the last thing, was managing energy, creating, space, creating the right pace, all those key things I was trying to get better at in my journey to 25. So hopefully those three things resonate, Gene.
Marcos has been talking about skill development as he's evolved as a leader. And I think it's very important to think about those. One of the big skills that you have to do, and I talked about this earlier when I was introducing the podcast, which is you may have gotten your company where you are because you're the MVP. You're the most valuable player, and you have the insight and the drive and the hunger, and you know how to do things. You get things done. That's remarkable. And it's excellent. But then it starts to fall apart as you become the bottleneck of the business. And you've got to shift your focus and shift your skills, not to be the MVP, but to create more MVPs. Now, when you're creating more MVPs, it means you're leading people, you're developing people, and you're developing all aspects so that they truly are able to add value to the organization. And it really is having going from 1 + 1 = 2 to 1 + 1 = 10, if you will. Because when you multiply those MVPs, your business will hit a second gear or a third gear that allows you to accelerate even faster. I work with fast growth companies, so I know what I'm talking about. And I'd love for you to really think about that idea as you continue to evolve your own leadership. Back to Marcos. Absolutely resonate with me because I've been through that. And it's some of the things I do with my clients. I will show them my calendar, and I'm honestly a little proud of it because the color coding it really helps me because I can look at it in a scan and go, what is the energy I need to bring to today? What does energy look like over the week? I can see with the color coding, I've got client meetings and I've got projects and I've got sales calls. I've got other things. I absolutely love it. So I recommend that for sure. And I agree with the systems. I agree with them, not you. Total in alignment with all this. So I'm glad you showed that and unpacked it for us, Marcos. Marcos, I really enjoyed you being here. That's our time. Talking about adaptable leadership and being adaptable leader is something I think that a lot of people should do, but they don't. They put their head down and show up every day, do the work. They're more like a firefighter. And what I'm sensing from you is you've learned the value of intentional leadership and evolving as you've grown as a leader.
I think you can always stretch and get better, and that's one of my key tenets. But I also think that helping people be successful also helps you in the long run as well. And it's frankly rewarding. So I think that's one of those things that once you start doing it, and that first step is hard, it's true. But once you start doing it, you get used to it and you start to like it, enjoy it.
Thanks for being here on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gene.
Another great conversation today. Adaptable leadership is something I think a lot of us should be striving toward and really try to understand, and really pushing your adaptability line to as far as remarkable as possible. Now, I'm borrowing that from some other work I've done, but everyone has a line at which they think, okay, I'm adaptable in these ways, and I'm not really that adaptable on this side. And some things I'm inflexible around. If you're inflexible around everything, obviously you're not very adaptable. But if you have the right kind of flexibility and you're able to demonstrate that and lead by example, I think you'll have the kind of culture that you want. And you want to make sure that you're not too adaptable, because that is wishy-washy, if you will. So when you think of leadership and you think of growth think tank. As always, live with courage. We'll see you next time.